You are listening to The Black Landscape with Andrea Spearman, where Black excellence is always trending. Happy Wednesday, peeps. We are here with Erik Lee. He is a UC Berkeley and Mills College trained dance artist, teacher, painter, small business owner, and possessor of a gorgeous smile that'll knock you off your feet. How are you today, Erik?
I'm well. What an introduction. I was like, oh, wow. Okay. I'm going to have to keep that for my personal archive. But yeah, I'm doing well. I'm sitting here, in the comfort of my own home like everyone else is, sipping my tea.
Yeah. So one of the first things I have to tell you is that, you are one of the most beautiful and dynamic dancers I've known.
Thank you so much. That means a lot, just as an artist, sometimes you have your moments where you're like, am I doing enough? Am I good? You are in the middle of the work. And so it's nice to have a moment to kind of step back and, from someone else's perspective, be able to be like, oh, okay, I should be congratulating and honoring that. Awesome.
Seriously, I want folks in the audience to Google you right now and check out all the amazing images that capture you in motion. It's a good look.
Thank you.
And that's where we're starting today. You've danced with so many great companies and people in the Bay Area, including Dimensions Dance Theater, Zacco Dance Theater, James Graham Dance Theater, and so many more. How did you start your dance journey?
Oh, this is a good story. So I have always danced as a child, but I was extremely shy and extremely timid. And so I actually would hide my dancing as best as I could. Sometimes it would just spill out. And so I would just go into a zone. But for the most part, I really didn't want anyone to know because I didn't want anyone to judge it or judge me for it. Because, boys dancing is it's not a major thing like it is now. It wasn't highly celebrated. So especially as a Black boy in Oakland. So I was hiding it. And then by the time I had reached, I think, high school, I was in a program called Upper Bound. And I started dancing because we had little parties and potlucks and things. And I just had decided, I just had a moment where I was like, you know what? I came to this experience wanting to try new things and wanting to take risks. And I was 16 at the time. And I was like, I'm just going to do it. So it really started there. Just that having that moment of courage, the moment of risk to just fully express myself and fully embody all the passion that I had in dance. And then fast forward into college, I started dancing there. I was auditioned for student hip hop groups at UC Berkeley. And then a friend of mine encouraged me to take a modern dance class. And at first I was so against it because I was like, oh, I don't dance like that. I'm not formally trained.
If you only knew.
And so I took the class, and I remember I showed up late. It was such a movie. I showed up late, and I was scrambling. I had on, I just bought some black leggings for the first time and a little black tank top. Grabbed my number, super nervous, and we were going through exercises, and I'm huffing and puffing. And there was a teacher there who had a clipboard, and she's circling us like sharks, like a shark, taking notes. And she probably was just, putting it on thick so that we could feel the pressure.
Of course.
Because she was known to do that. But once we got to the floor, we started doing floor work. And something just lit up inside of me. I was like, what are we doing? Why does this feel so good to be on the floor, dancing like this? And that's when I tell people the modern dance bug really bit me. And it just, I have never looked back since. So I've been finding, all the ways to integrate different disciplines together. Of course, bring in some of that hip hop experience along with other styles that I've been learning. So that's how my dance journey started. I'm a quote unquote late bloomer with really starting to be, starting in dance formally at the age of 18, 19. But yeah, I encourage people with that story to just go for it. Whatever they're passionate about, just do it. Don't hide it. Don't suppress it, because it's going to spill out eventually. And you should just let it flow.
It's so funny that you say late bloomer. People like to use that term. I'm like, there's no such thing as late blooming in dance. You can dance whenever and whatever age you feel like. It's just going to be framed differently in a different body.
Right. You're right. Yeah. And that's a whole conversation in itself.
It is.
It's a whole nother conversation.
Yes.
It's a good conversation for people to have. And I'm thankful for being able to have other dance colleagues to talk with about that, who have had very different, dance journeys. Because I think all of us have kind of realized, that we bought into an idea of what dance was supposed to be, that was steeped in, hierarchy, that was steeped in classism. And so now, we know better.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, we are able to appreciate our own personal dance journeys and celebrate others as well.
Okay. So, Armed with Joy. That was a work you premiered almost 2 years ago, stating that joy is the best defensive guard against the inevitable slings and arrows life sends. Describe to us how your spirituality manifests in the work that you create.
Great question. Thank you for bringing up that work, because I immediately had a heartfelt moment, because that piece meant a lot to me. But to answer your question, it started with, I've always had a desire to, I should say this. I have two major passions in my life in Christ, and as a man of God, but also as a dance artist. And I never saw the two coming together. I think I had thought about it at one point in time, but I just didn't see the way. And so I just kind of cast it off to the side. And it wasn't until, because the church I went to, grew up in a culture church, went to Acts, love Acts. And I only saw teenage girls dancing in church. And so, visually, I was like, okay, I get it. That's not for me. And just being in the culture of church, I was like, no, that's not going to happen. It's not going to fly. And it wasn't until I was in college at UC Berkeley that I went to go visit a church there, which is now the church that I attend, Covenant Church, that I saw men dancing. And I was like, whoa, they let men dance in here? What?
Yes.
And it was anointed. And for those who don't know what that term means, it means specifically touched by God, appointed, designated to do this specific thing for his praise and for his glory. And so how it's received was different, because it didn't feel like a performance. It felt like life. If people say, "Ooh, that gave me life," that feeling is what I was feeling. And I was like, wow, I have to know who these people are. I need to ask questions. I need to be a part of this. And so that's when I had met my friend Noah David James, and he was a leader there. And so we had talked, and subsequent had joined the ministry. And so that's how I started in dance ministry. And then I want to say probably a few years before I started grad school at Mills, which was 2015, is when I started to feel the push to do dance ministry, or really just kind of really mashing dance and spirituality together in the public. And so taking it out of the four walls of the church. And I had done a little bit of, our ministry had been traveling quite a bit to different churches, but we got invited to dance at a community event. And so it just kind of started to really, kind of gnaw at me a bit. Like I really, really could see it happening in many different spaces. And the beauty of that and the awesomeness of what that could entail. Because I had already received a vision of dance ministry happening on like huge stages, like Broadway stages, but happening in a very specific way in which, people are coming thinking that they're just going to be entertained, but they leave really inspired and life changed and are able to, start their own path and journey in Christ. And so that's what really pushed me. I had that conversation with myself and with God, and I was like, okay, we can do this. Like, I know you can do anything, and I just need to get myself together because I need to not be afraid. There was a lot of fear wrapped in it and how it would be received. And so I had to relinquish that because in my mind, it really just came down to the simple point of, that this is beneficial, that it's impactful. So why not share it with people who may not ever see it? Yes, there's going to be some people who are going to be turned off by it, but think about all the people who would benefit from it, who have never stepped inside of a church before or never saw anything spiritual in that way expressed in an artistic medium on a professional stage or a professional space, who would, it was like, use your imagination in the positive direction. And I always tell my friend, like, we use our imaginations and think about what could go wrong and it's steeped in fear. Why don't we just shift our imagination and really think about all the things that could go right, that could go well, that could be excellent, that could be awesome, and shift in that way into faith. And so that's what really pushed me to start doing more pieces that were, steeped in my own experience with Christ and spirituality on different stages.
I love how you envision like this Broadway setting. It's like you came for a show, you leave with a savior.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Exactly. And I saw one of the first things that I saw was like this baptism pool, and like it was like, the dancing and everything was over, but people were just so hungry for him, and then like just a pool just appeared. I don't know how it got there, but it just appeared on the stage, and then a line formed, and I was like, oh my gosh, like what am I seeing right now? And so I've been in pursuit of that vision, and I expressed it to my bishop, my pastor at my church, and he was just like, oh yeah, I'm excited about that. I see it. So that was, to get that encouragement also was really awesome.
Yes. And another thing that you touched on is the representation aspect of it. Mm-hmm. It's like you couldn't envision it for yourself until you saw it. And that's such a major thing, especially when it comes to dance and ministry. I feel like there's been such a wonderful surgence of more male dancers worshiping God and being on that platform to give praise and worship through their bodies in the last 5 years, maybe 6 or 7 or 8.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely is like, and it's like there were people doing mime worship, but like folks really moving into the body as a whole and adding technique to it.
Yes.
Adding modern dance techniques like Dunham and Horton and traditional ballet learnings. I feel like it's been such a resurgence, and you've definitely been a part of that in the Bay Area scene.
Thank you. Yeah. And even, since I've been working with Dimensions, it's like, oh, now I get to like find ways to incorporate this Congolese dance training that I've been receiving and tapping into, some of this Haitian dance I've been learning. So that's also been really exciting too. And it's so funny. It just comes out. Like there was a time we were in church and this, the spirit was moving, and I was dancing in the prophetic, but in the back of my mind, I was like, am I doing a Cuban dance right now?
It happens.
And it just came out, but it was such the timing of it and the intention behind it was so perfect in that moment. And I was like, wow, people need to know that, dance ministry doesn't have to look one way. And I think people are used to seeing it in one particular way of gestures, that are very expressive, but like you said, to fully embody movement, and using all these different forms to communicate the message is so beautiful and so good for people to know that there's the limits are off. It's limitless.
Yes, take the limits off. So while we're talking about dance, tell me about your experience with the Erik camp. Like, how did you get there?
Yes. So it's funny because Erik camp has been one of those things that has been pursuing me for a while, and I wasn't able to take advantage. So I used to dance with Ross Dance Company by Tisha Evans, and she had a friend, Derek Mentor, who actually recently passed, but she was like, I think Erik would be good for Erik camp. Or they had been talking, and I think he had wanted me to join Erik camp. But I wasn't able to join because the job that I had at the time, we did summer school. And so, or like summer academy, where we would front load the kids for the next academic year. And so I was like, oh, I'm never available. But he would always like send me a message every now and then. And so when I left there and I started grad school, I had, my summers were free. And so I was like, oh, let me try Erik camp. And so I had applied, interviewed, and, was able to get the position. And he was like, oh, you finally made your way on over here after all this time.
They said, we finally got you.
Yes. So, and I had friends, Alicia Zakon, who's an amazing dancer. She's also a writer, poet, in the Bay Area. She also a Cal graduate. She had encouraged me, and I had another dance friend who also was in Erik camp. So I had new people who were group leaders. They were essentially the people who were responsible for guiding the students, a group of students through their whole camp experience. So that's how I got a part of Erik camp. And it really was like, in terms of working with youth, it was probably like the best experience that I've had, because it married everything that I had learned in terms of youth development and dance. Like, it was just the perfect combination. I had been a program director for a mentoring program with Black and Brown students for many years. And then before that, I was a mentor, a part of the same program before a different cohort, Berkeley Scholars to Cal. And so all of that training, like, definitely came in handy. And then also just being able to do that with students who had, many have never danced before in a formal setting. So that was the beautiful thing about Erik camp, was it really was less about, it's a dance camp, but it's less about the dance and more about the personal development of the young person and using dance as a vehicle to do that. And so all of my skills that I had learned really came into play. And I was so grateful to have that opportunity. And David McCauley, the amazing artistic director and camp director, was very instrumental in helping me to guide me through that process, as well as Naomi Diop, who's, her and her husband, Papa Zach of Diamano Cora. So I was and Derek Mentor was a former Erik dancer as well. So I was in the presence of greatness in terms of dance and everybody in their own different rights. And so that it was enriching. And yeah, A. Lee Camp is very, very special experience.
Yeah, and for our audience members who don't know what A League Camp is, can you just describe a little bit about what the camp is about and like a typical day?
Yes, so A. Lee Camp is a 6 weeks dance camp for middle school age children, so like 11 to 14. And they are embark on a journey where they learn 4 different dance disciplines. It's typically ballet, um, African, jazz, um, and modern. And there's about, I think there's 8 or 9 camps around the country. And each one are modeled in the same way, but have, slight differences. But in those 6 weeks, they're, taking these 4 classes, and they also take 2 other classes. One's called personal development, where they get to talk about various social, political things, and as well as, how to be safe as a young person. So they learn, a little bit of kind of like sex education, but, in a more advanced kind of way. They also learn about, dieting, like how to be healthy, how to set boundaries and protect yourself, interpersonal relationships. And they also have another class called creative communications, where they, learn how to creatively communicate an idea, but in a different medium. So it's usually, because they've been dancing all day, it's a, intensive day. So usually it's like poetry or some type of written prose, sometimes photography. But yeah, they engage upon that for 6 weeks, and then it culminates in a really big performance at UC Berkeley's campus. They're in Zellerbach, and they get to perform on the Zellerbach stage with a whole full professional crew, and really awesome. So a typical day for them is breakfast at 9, then, at 8. We meet at 9 a.m. to kind of go over what they are to expect during the day. They recite their 10 affirmations, which are really beautiful and kind of help mentally prepare them. And then they go into their classes. Each class is usually between like an hour, hour and a half long. But they're moving. They get like a 10-minute or less transition from each class. But it's really intensive,
Yeah,
physically
you teaching the
demanding.
kids stamina.
Yeah. And we're walking, constantly from one building to another, and then teaching them dance etiquette, theater etiquette, all of that. And it's a really wonderful experience. And so they have all of these teachers and staff members around them, but they also have group leaders, which is what I was for about 3 years. And the group leaders have one of the toughest jobs, but most rewarding, is that they are responsible for herding and shepherding their students through the whole experience. So we walk them to each and every class. We take the classes with them often. We're watching them, closely, making sure they're well hydrated, helping them with learning choreography or, dance combinations that they're learning. We sit with them at lunch, so we're with them at like all points of the day, even picking them up early in the morning on the bus that picks them up at various school locations. So it's a long day, but you really get to know them. The group leaders know the campers, as we call them, like nobody else, because we're with them all day at every minute of the day. But it's really great for those who love like the hands-on experience and being able to have really good conversation and to develop rapport with youth, because it's special. Like I always felt privileged, and like the bonds that you get to create and the way that you get to inspire and teach and to mentor in that way is really beautiful. And children at that age during the summertime just always grow like exponentially. Like the parents be like, who is, I don't know who this child is. that y'all have created in the 6 weeks. I don't know who that child is. That my child came to this camp, and I don't know who this child is that y'all bringing back to me. But I love this child. So literally had a parent say that almost verbatim, and she was like so grateful. And to see the looks on their faces after they finish camp is just priceless, because they're like, wow, we've done so much together, and it's a camp. It's free for students, so it's 100% contributed by donors. So families pay nothing, which is, amazing. And they get, appropriate attire. So they get ballet shoes, they get, leotards and tights and all of that goodness. So it's really amazing.
So do you consider yourself a role model for these young dancers?
I do. It's very interesting. I'm okay with being a role model. I know that there are people who aren't, and I don't. I laugh because the first person that came to mind was Cardi B, because I heard her say in an interview that she was like not interested in being a role model, and it was a very controversial thing for her to say, and there were so many strong comments for and against that. And I find myself saying, it's okay. Like, that's her life. That's her path. If she doesn't want to be a role model, then she doesn't have to be a role model. And
it's not mandatory.
If as a parent, you don't want your child, patterning themselves after how she conducts herself, then you teach your child different. I know that it's not that simple in terms of how it plays out in the development of us as people, but I think it's good for us to simplify certain things, or at least our approach and our mindset to it, to not stress ourselves out, because there are so many people in the world, and it's like, well, yeah, if you don't want her to be a role model, then you direct your attention to someone else, and let them live their lives. But yes, I do consider myself, to answer the question, to be a role model to the youth. And that actually, it never stifles me, because I never feel like I have to be a perfect version of anything. What it actually does for me is it pushes me to challenge myself, because for me, thinking about myself as a role model means that I need to show them how to be more confident, more fearless, and to really go after the things that I'm passionate about, and to not hold back, right? Because I want them as young people to do all of those things. And because I want all of those things for them, I need to embody that. I need to be the example of that. And so with the students that I was mentoring when I was a program director, I was really battling with whether or not I was going to go to graduate school, because it meant that I had to stop working with them and I had to leave that job. But the thought flashed across my mind of like, no, you need to do this because you're preparing them for college. So why not be the living example to them that says, hey, there's another step after college that you can take in academia if you so choose to do so. Here's another glimpse of what more academic excellence you can strive for. And so that really pushed me to be settled in, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get this master's and go on upon that journey and do it with 100%, 110% kind of attitude and openness and readiness.
Yes. Erik, how has the landscape of Bay Area dance changed as you've been working inside of it?
Ooh, that's a good question. Visually, what I've seen that's changed is I've been seeing more younger people. Like, I've been seeing more of my generation and younger in shows. And so that has been very exciting for me to see. And
Do
I
you mean
think,
professional level shows, like on
yeah,
stages?
like BCF, Black Choreographers Festival, which I'm incredibly grateful for, because my first show post undergrad was BCF. I was dancing for my mentor, Michael Velez, and yeah, it was that space. Kendra Kimbrough Barnes and Laura Elaine Ellis are just like dope, awesome, amazing women to be at the helm of allowing new artists to showcase their work and to be seen in the community. So I'm like super grateful for that. That's been one thing that's really stuck out to me. I'm seeing more artists of color too, pushing out into different spaces. And I think there's just more, I think it's also unique of the Bay Area for us to see new work and new artists in different spaces. I just find it's way more communal in that way. But yeah, it's been really great to see more artists stepping out, more artists of color. So in terms of the landscape, I think that's the one thing that I've been noticing.
Yes, I would definitely say the Bay Area has almost moved past New York by way of having so many artists per square footage in the Bay Area. And that's,
Right.
that's even outside of San Francisco, that's North Bay, that's East Bay, that's South Bay, There's so many different arenas and genres and styles that people are doing into subgenres and sub-styles and creating their own forms of movement as it comes
Definitely.
to where we live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and spaces. I went to a show that was like like a montage podge of like some of my favorite dancers, and I was like, "What? How in the world did this happen?" But it was it was in a showroom, like a home furnishing showroom in San
Oh,
Francisco. And Kara Davis, one of my dance mentors and teachers, was in the show, as well as Frankie. And I was just like, what? Like, this is amazing. It was really beautiful. It was incredible. So it's been exciting to see that too. The risks that people are taking, the ways that they're seeking to do and show work in new ways. And it's really, and I always sense, not always sense, but I've just been sensing more than not that it's coming from like a genuine place. Also, pricing, like the pay what you can. I've seen more of that on flyers than in the past, where it was like, this is the ticket price, So it's those little things that I've noticed that I've been very appreciative of, because I feel like as professionals, we all recognize one of the larger issues about our engagement with the general public is access and resources. And I think in the Bay Area, more professionals see that it's an issue that needs to be addressed in many different ways. And so finding ways to increase access has been important. So it's been really exciting to see the, pay what you can or donation sliding scale pricing. That's been really exciting for me to see as well.
yes. Yes. I think that word access is also a major contributor to the Bay Area scene. Because it's like, for $100, you can go see SF Ballet, or for $20, you can go over to Safe House and see 4 different artists, some
Right.
emerging, some mid-career.
Yes.
I
And
think the variation of it is what makes the Bay Area so great.
Yes.
Hey fam, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me tell you about it. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard across Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast, just in one place. Now download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Okay, so switching gears, talk to me about your other talents, specifically the small business you've started making greeting cards. How did you get there?
Yes, I've always liked all kinds of artistic things, but the short story is that I was looking for another job. I was hustling, for a long time. I was doing the multi-job thing.
That is a staple of the Bay Area. Everybody does one.
And a friend of mine who loves crafting said, you should really check out this store called Paper Source. And I was like, okay, I'll check it out. And I was completely enamored by the store. It's a paper crafting and like event invitation based specialty store. So you can go there to they have many, gifts and things that you can purchase, but predominantly it was meant to be shopped by people who were doing DIY projects for invitations, party and wedding, and just general paper crafting. And so they have like this huge section of very colorful paper, and they have a wide selection of cardstock in different colors that you can use. And so I started visiting there. Then I applied to work there, got the job, and part of the job was to, of course, make cards. And we were to make cards to show customers, what they could do with some of the tools that we had, as well as inspire people to make things. Their slogan is do something creative every day. And so I was making cards, and my managers were like, Erik, these cards are like gorgeous. Like they look really professional. Like sometimes I can't tell between what's your card and the cards that are factory made that corporate sends us.
I love that.
That's really sweet. And of course, I would hear from customers too, and they'd be like, "Oh, where can I purchase this?" And I'd be like, "Oh, sorry, I actually made that card. I can't. It's not a card that we sell." And people would be like, "Oh my gosh, you should sell cards." And I was so against it. I was so resistant because I was afraid. I didn't want to corrupt it with business. And I feel this way about my paintings. I don't feel this way about my cards. And I had to make this distinction for myself. When it comes to painting, I feel like I'm painting just for the experience of it and to show people things. And I often feel like me selling it just isn't like, I never wanted to like commodify it. Because I always felt like it was more so something for me and other people to just enjoy without some kind of like barrier in between. But the difference with the card making is that it's something that I'm giving to someone as an experience. Like the card itself, receiving the card and what the card says is an experience. And so I was okay with selling it because I'm like, well, I'm allowing all these other people to have a special experience with this card or whatever experience surrounds the card, if it's a birthday card or a Christmas card, what have you. And so I was like, I'm okay with that. I can sell this, especially because I want people to experience this love, this joy, this affection, what have you. And, it's a good way to make some money. So that's how all of that started. So I started it about 2 years ago. I finally just took the leap and I had created a couple of cards. It was a Black Queen and Black King. They were both inspired by some models I had seen, some Black models. Just went from there. And I was just like, okay, I already know what the name of the business is going to be because this was a Raycreations, and Raycreator was a a concept I had started in college. And so I just decided to just go for it. And I took a hiatus last year because I was experiencing like a little bit of a artistic block. But yeah, friends of mine encouraged me to like start it back up again and really go full force with it. So that's how Raycreations has, been born. And so I'm moving into, you know, February is coming up, Valentine's Day, Black History Month, and so I'm in progress of working on those right now.
Yes. We need those dropped immediately. The people request it.
Yes, they are coming soon. Plan on doing a Valentine sneak peek very soon.
Awesome. Where will we be able to find that?
Yes, on my Instagram, Raycreations _ Erik, and that's RAYCREATIONS _ Erik. And I also post them on my social media on Facebook as well. There will be a website soon, but I'm taking my time to build things and, not feel like everything has to be big really fast. You can follow me. And you can also, I also posted on my personal Instagram, Recreational as well.
Awesome. So, Erik, what else should people know about you?
The first, I don't know why that was the first thing that came to me. I love Christmas. Like I love Christmas. I like my friends. I tell my friends and people that I meet, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, it's one of your favorite holidays." But when people actually see me, like in the season, everyone has the same moment, and it cracks me up every time. Their eyes get big, and it's something that I say, or they see me do something, and they're like, "Oh, wow, you really love Christmas."
Doesn't it feel like Christmas? Doesn't it feel like Christmas? That's
right.
you.
DC3. And so I think what I love about Christmas so much is one, family. It's always been about family for me, getting together with your loved ones. I love food. I love to eat. And I've been, since the pandemic hit, I've been getting my bake on my cooking skills have improved 5 times over. So being able to do those things, and again, this whole concept of giving to people. And so it's not so much about receiving for me. I love finding gifts that are meaningful, no matter what the price is. Price does not matter. And I love wrapping gifts. So, the whole design aspect of things. And so I get to express all those aspects of myself and all those things about life that I appreciate, meaningful relationships, being able to give, things or experiences to people that are meaningful, being able to express myself in terms of creativity with how I'm wrapping gifts and presentation, and music, dance, so it incorporates all of those things. And also get to celebrate, the birth of Jesus, although we know he wasn't born in the wintertime. But, it's all of those things get celebrated and concentrated into that one season. And I think that's why I love it so much. So,
I love that word meaningful. Yeah. And, speaking of meaningful, what are you holding space for in 2021?
I am holding space for more risk. So I guess this will answer this question and the one you asked before about what you should know about me, is that I decided, and I had made the declaration at the beginning of last year to start a dance company. And I was so terrified of it. And I recognized during this time of being sheltered in place that there are so many things that I have been fearful of that I have masked with excuses of why it won't work or why it's not a good idea or how it's not feasible. So finding all these calculated ways to not do something that I've communicated to myself and to other people, only to realize like you just found a very fancy way to tell yourself you're not going to do that because you're afraid of succeeding or failing. And so I'm really holding space for taking risks, and doing things that don't quite make sense, but I know, or that I don't know all the answers to or enough answers, but doing it anyway and starting it small. I've had a couple influential people tell me the same thing, and I was like, okay, wow, God, I hear you. They both said, don't be afraid to start small. Don't be afraid to allow, the duct tape, the masking tape, the scissors to be seen. you know, like it's okay. It doesn't have to be large at the beginning, and it's actually better that it doesn't. So that people can appreciate the end product, but also appreciate the journey of where you started to where you're headed to. And so I'm really holding space for that. That has been one of the biggest things that I have learned in 2020 that I'm definitely carrying into this year, is not being afraid to start small, not being afraid to have a humble beginning, and to honor it, to not despise it at all.
Yes, indeed. I think that advice from them to start small is perfect, because like even one of our greats, Alvin Ailey, was dancing in somebody's living room apartment.
Yes.
And they were starting off in bleak, damp basements and attics and small rooms at community centers. So
yeah, it's something weird that happens. It's like we forget how we started certain things or where we came from when we want to embark on a new thing, and we feel like, oh, I need to, like, it's got to be polished. And it's like, well, where you've gotten yourself now, you started from somewhere really basic and simple. So why are you putting this pressure on yourself for it to be polished from the start? So I think, and there's a lot of different answers to that. I think some of that has to do with our fast-paced society. I think some of it has to do with, people wanting to keep up with the Joneses and, what they see on Instagram and feeling like, how am I going to be able to compete with that? So I there's a whole myriad of reasons for why that is, but we really have to like dismantle all of that and really focus on why we're doing it, and focus on doing it well with what we have, and then growing from there.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Erik.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
So to all of our listeners, this has been another episode of The Black Landscape with Andrea Spearman, where Black excellence is always trending.